Welcome, everybody, to a very special All-Star MLB Draft, end of the first half, early morning edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show family. Zach, you got your coffee this morning to wake you up? Are you a big coffee guy?
I am. I might have 2 mugs sitting here filled with coffee.
Wow.
And it's important. We have a lot to get to today, including analyzing why the hell I had a dream last night that the Guardians drafted Miles Straw.
I mean, that's a great tease. You're going to be a full radio guy before you know it. It's the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show. Wow, the surprise Miles Straw appearance coming up later, right here. Well, Zach, thankfully the Guardians did not draft Miles Straw, as they already have him. Unfortunately, that's the unfortunate part, and we'll get to your dream about that later. But yesterday, just after 7 p.m., the Guardians, for the first time in the history of their franchise, started the Major League Baseball draft with the first overall pick. We've talked about the MLB draft this year, probably more this year than we have every other year combined.
Had you ever talked about it in all your years of radio here?
Never before the draft. Maybe after, if there was an interesting player they drafted, we'd do one interview about that guy. But I don't remember ever talking about the draft before, because in recent years, not only have the Guardians not had the first pick, they haven't had a particularly high pick all that often in recent years. So as far as I can recall, I don't think we've ever talked about it before, but this year obviously was a big story.
And it's not always the first rounder who's going to be the star player.
That's true.
It's like Stephen Kwan was a 5th-round pick. They always get their pitchers later, it seems. And just looking back at their top picks over the years, it's been a little shaky. And I think it's like that for a lot of teams. It's just it's such a crapshoot. So it's it's never going to get to the point where it's like the NFL draft or even the NBA draft. But I do think it's become more prominent because you're seeing kids make it to the majors quicker. It used to be, all right, they drafted John Smith. We'll see him in 6 years. And now it's like, okay, they drafted John Smith and maybe you could see him in 2.
Yeah, I mean, especially the high picks. And we're seeing also another trend that's part of the reason for this is that most of the top 10 picks now are college guys.
Mm-hmm.
You used to have a lot of higher picks be high school guys because the major league teams thought they could develop them better than college. But the college programs, the top programs especially, have become very good at developing players and becoming kind of like the NBA and the NFL to some degree, where they're a minor league system, essentially, on some level. Obviously, MLB has a minor league system, but to some degree for these college guys, it is. Like Travis Bazzana, who we're going to talk about in a moment, the first overall pick by the Guardians. Fair or not, I'm expecting to see him in the big leagues in less than a year.
Yeah.
Now, that may not happen, but that's what I'm expecting right now.
Yeah, and it's Cleveland it's just such an interesting position because you said it. They have never had the top pick. All those years of misery in the 70s and 80s, and they never landed the number 1 pick. And then it's the second year of the draft lottery. They had the 9th best odds. It was about 2%, and they get it.
Yeah.
And not only do they get it, but they also are having a sort of a renaissance season here that no one expected. And so it's just doubly interesting from the standpoint of you're drafting a college kid who seems pretty polished for where he's at. He'll be 22, I think, at the end of August, and he could help you. You're already you're a World Series contender. You have the best record in the American League at the All-Star break, even if the last week or so has not gone your way.
Right.
So you're a World Series contender, and you're adding the number 1 overall pick who could help you as soon as next year. So I don't know how many teams have been in that sort of position before, but I'm sure it's not many.
So let's get into it. You're right. There haven't been many. There's been a couple of situations like this, but it's very rare. Because it's very rare for a team to turn it around. And usually if you get the first pick, until, as you said, 2 years ago, it was always the worst team. And in baseball, it's very hard to turn the worst team around in 1 year. I mean, it really doesn't happen. It can happen in football or basketball because you get a superstar. In baseball, even if you get a superstar, he's not going to be a superstar for you that first year. So it's very unlikely. Now it's more likely to happen because of the lottery, and some teams that are kind of mediocre, which the Guardians were last year and not terrible, are able to get that top player, and that's the situation they're in. I texted my man Mike Ferrin, who covers Major League Baseball for MLB Network Radio, but he's also a huge college baseball guy, does a lot of play-by-play, is really into it, does a college baseball show. I just texted him after the draft. I said, hey, Mike, Bazzana the right call? He goes, wasn't the wrong call. There's no superstar in this draft. He was one of a couple of guys that made a lot of sense. He said he's a tireless worker, high baseball IQ, great kid. And so all positive things. It did appear not that necessarily, like, this is obvious. There was no Paul Skeens in this draft or a Bryce Harper. That doesn't mean Travis Bazzana can't become a perennial all-star in Major League Baseball, potentially. But I think there was debate as to who was actually the best player in the draft. What I like about this, and we'll find out down the line if he was actually the best player. What I like about this, it was clear they didn't let saving money. And when I say saving money, I know you clarified this last week, so I'll clarify it again. Not saving money so they didn't have to pay money to their draft picks. Saving money to use more money with their extra early picks. They clearly picked the guy they thought was going to be the best player, and I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's a perfect match. I mean, we know they love middle infielders with elite contact ability and who can make great swing decisions. And look, I don't know what any of these kids will turn into. You don't know what any of these kids will turn into. Even the scouts and the experts don't know what any of these kids will turn into, or else you would see every team have a much better track record with drafting than they do. But the goal in this process, I know from the Guardian standpoint, is to eliminate all of as much risk as you can. And so you're trying to look at this objectively. I think when you do that, you tend to lean toward the kids with the higher floors, even if it's not necessarily the highest ceiling. And this is a perfect draft for that, as you just mentioned. As Mike said, it's there's not a clear-cut, obvious number one guy who was the number one guy for a couple of years, and we knew that this was going to be their draft. And the thing that's interesting with Bazzana is, like, they obsess over a kid's makeup. They a lot of teams have done this more, but you're leaning more into video and data and scouting that way, where you could just get video of a guy's week of at-bats and study his swing mechanics and get a decent idea of what kind of hitter he might be able to become. And you get all the information off of that. What's his swing speed? What are his biomechanics? Or if it's a pitcher, I mean, that stuff is, you've got every metric at your fingertips, right? The one thing you cannot measure, and the reason why teams still have scouts, is the person and getting to know, okay, is this guy just going to, like, rest on his laurels and be fine being a big leaguer? Is he going to work hard? Is he willing to embrace information and instruction and all of those things that can make you better? Like, Tanner Bybee is the perfect example of that. A guy who admits that he had a not the college career he wanted, where his stuff was okay. He went to Cal State Fullerton. The year he was their ace was like the one year they didn't make the playoffs in the last century. And he got to the Guardians organization, and he was so willing to dive headfirst into all the instruction they could give and all the analytics and just trying to find any way possible to be better. And they want guys with that sort of drive. Yeah. And this is how Travis Bazzana became the number one pick in the first place, because he was in Australia. He loved baseball. He's like, how can I get to the major leagues? He had some guidance from a couple of Australian pitchers who had pitched briefly in the majors. And he ends up at Oregon State. Even when he's an incoming freshman, he said there was no pressure because no one expected him to do anything. And then last year, he goes to the Cape Cod League, where the Guardians have always had a huge presence. He wins MVP of that league. He made himself, like, he's got this insane, like, Stephen Kwan-esque ability to handle the strike zone and to know what pitches to swing at and what pitches not to. You see, he had 76 walks and 37 strikeouts in just under 300 plate appearances last year, which is insane. And he hit for way more power, and he looks like the complete package offensively. And he did that himself. Like, he studied, how can I make better swing decisions? How can I resist those pitches pitchers want me to swing at? So it's what they studied with him, like on that, like the makeup, the work ethic, all those things, he's off the charts. And so I think that made him the perfect pick, because he was a guy that they would have liked whether they had the number one pick or not. And he made sense for them at that spot.
Zach, you mentioned 76 walks, 37 strikeouts, which is pretty, I mean, these nowadays is, even in college, is crazy. For his career at Oregon State, he did strike out more than he walked as a freshman. So he's 62 Ks, 45 walks. And then in his second year, went 59 walks, 47 Ks. And then you mentioned it. You also mentioned the Cape Cod League, 150 plate appearances there. Wooden bat, all the best talent around the country, 18 walks and 18 strikeouts. The guy at Oregon State had an on-base percentage at Oregon State of 497. So, like, that is through the roof, off the charts. He becomes the first second baseman ever drafted first overall, the first player from Australia ever drafted first overall, and he better become the all-time Australian home run leader, because I think the leader is Dave Nielsen from the Brewers with not that many home runs. So, I mean, clearly this guy is very enthusiastic about baseball. He's a good defender. He has good speed. He has incredible baseball instincts. There's a lot to like about him. And let me throw this at you. I think here's a resulting positive, I think, from them drafting Travis Bazzana, and the fact that I'm assuming this offseason, they'll be thinking about him as the starting second baseman next year. And now you can trade away a lot of that glut. There's even less pressure in terms of, what about the shortstops? Well, you're moving Andres Gimenez to short, most likely. Even more of a reason at this deadline, which now they got to focus on after, another day or two of the draft in the next 2 weeks. Now you even have more room to trade from that glut of shortstops, which could be a resulting net positive at the trade deadline. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's, you stockpile middle infielders forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting here thinking, are there any legitimate worthy candidates in this group? We haven't seen it yet. And now it doesn't matter. Bazzana will start as a second. I keep saying Bazzana.
What is it, the correct pronunciation? Is it Bazzana?
I feel like I've heard both.
Yeah.
We should know this. They'll start him as a second baseman.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's going to end there yet. They think he can become a good second baseman, but they admit that's his, he's a much more advanced hitter than he is fielder, but he's very athletic. So I think you'd prefer the offensive profile at second base. If you move him to right field, I don't know if that's ideal. Then maybe you should have just taken Charlie Condon, if that's the case. If he moves to like center field, that would be an option. But either way, it's there's one less spot for the Brian Rocchios, and Juan Burrito is probably going to have to find somewhere else to play, and it puts more pressure on everybody. I mean, like Angel Martinez goes to center field, well, then Tyler Freeman's fighting for a job. So it's good though. Like, they needed, 100%. Yeah, we've been saying they can fit any position player they want at the trade deadline here, because they have so much defensive versatility, and it goes for next year too. You add the number one pick to the mix, and whether he's at second base or center field or wherever he winds up, he's squeezing someone out of a job, but that's good. They should have that pressure on them to perform.
I wonder if Stephen Kwan has any kind of a relationship with him.
Yeah, they do.
They do. Okay, that makes sense. What did you talk to him about him yet, or no?
Yeah, I mean, he was endorsing him the entire process, of course.
Right.
And Travis said, like, how valuable it is to just have somebody he knows who, one, has been through the draft process before, but two, has climbed the organizational ladder and knows what to expect. And I don't know, like it'll be interesting to see just how quickly he moves. I guess he starts at probably Lake County for a minute.
You're probably right. I would start him right in Akron. If I were them, I would just say, let's go. You can play AA ball right now.
It's probably
right.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the kind of thing where he like literally just goes to
For a
East
week.
Lake for like a week and sees their row of toilet seats in the front and the crazy stuff they have going on there, and then he's in Akron a week later. But it'll be interesting. Like I would think he'd be in big league camp next spring, which is crazy. And you have a familiar face right there who can kind of show you the ropes. I think that's beneficial.
And another, a fellow, not only fellow Oregon State alum, but a fellow high character, high quality individual from him to learn from. And who knows? I mean, we've talked about, I know this is being overly aggressive and overly optimistic, but he seems like a guy who could be a number 2 hitter in a lineup, which they need a number 2 hitter. And we could have the Oregon State boys, Quan and Bazzana, batting back to back by some point next year in that starting lineup. Be pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't want to hype up this pick like he's the second coming. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
no,
it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it could be a really, really good fit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Real quickly on the other guys the Guardians drafted yesterday. Their second pick was a high school pitcher named Braylon Dowdy. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correct. That was the 36th overall pick out of Chaparral High School in Temecula, California. I feel like I've heard of that high school before. It's probably one of those baseball factories out in California.
Well, weren't there people fighting one time on Twitter saying, "Meet me in Temecula"?
Were they?
A viral thing.
I don't know. You're much more up on those fights than I am, so I'm not sure what's happening. And in their third pick yesterday, they took a catcher named Jacob Cozart. Cozart went to North Carolina State.
Yep.
With the 48th overall pick. So those were their 3 picks. He's a big kid, 6'3", 222, 21 years old. The only knock I saw on the high school pitcher is that he's not that big. He's 18. He's only 6'1", but apparently he's got some pretty nasty stuff. But teams are sometimes weird about shorter pitchers. Like I feel like shorter pitchers kind of, even if they're really good, get underrated because teams are just, whatever reason, don't love shorter pitchers. That was the thing with Shota Imanaga of the Cubs this offseason coming from Japan. People were hesitant on him, and he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball this year. So I'm not saying this kid's going to be, he's 18 years old. He will not be in the big leagues anytime soon. He's going to be there for a while, but he seems like the type of guy, early first glance, without really knowing much about him besides reading about him this morning briefly, that makes sense for the Guardians with that pick. A high-skilled player with upside.
Yeah, I mean, 6'1's not. I mean, this isn't Tim Lincecum,
right? Yeah, no, I know.
Or even Eli Morgan. So it's. Figured they get a pitcher at some point early on, and then the catcher's interesting because you can always use catching depth, and to draft a college kid, there's a timeline there where if the defensive acumen is there,
right,
you can move reasonably quickly, I think, and. I don't know who like the future backup to Bo Naylor is. I don't know that it matters either. I mean, you can always find that in free agency or a trade, but it is interesting. I mean, he's a guy with a lot of power, so we know they value the defensive side a lot more at that position.
No doubt. All right, before we move off the draft, last thing on the draft, we got to talk about your dream. For those who were not with us in the beginning of this show, Zach had a dream about the Guardians drafting somebody. I've really got to call it a nightmare. I mean, it's more of a nightmare than a dream. But go ahead, explain yourself to those who were not with us briefly earlier.
I never remember my dreams either, but I just know that Rob Manfred got up there, said the Guardians with whatever pick it was, they drafted Miles Straw, and it was his face. But it was the one difference was it was spelled Miles. So it was almost like it was his, I don't know, his Jekyll and Hyde. It was absolutely bizarre, and I think I just said like, "Oh, here we go again."
Oh boy! Did you wake up in like a cold sweat, having to throw up? I mean, what was happening when you got up?
Yeah, just completely discombobulated and didn't know where I was, and that was the night's sleep for me. It was over.
All right, quick break. FanDuel, folks. Let's talk about FanDuel. There's not as many sports going on right now. It's a little bit of a break, right? The All-Star break, but there's always things to do at FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Home Run Derby tonight. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. There you go. All right. We are.
Did you see, by the way?
Yeah.
It was interesting to follow the betting odds on the number one pick because Bazzana was the favorite for a while.
Yep.
And then Weatherholt became the favorite for a lot of yesterday. And then I think by the time the draft rolled around, they were about even.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of thought that Weatherholt was going to get drafted, so they would save money on that end to be able to spend more later. And that didn't happen.
Now look, it seems never going to be completely honest about this. I'm pretty sure they had Bazzana number one all along. They said Chris Antonetti even said that they didn't know who the pick would be until a couple hours before the draft. But I think a lot of that is posturing just to float out there that Weatherholt is the guy and just to see what the terms would be with each player and then make your decision. So very interesting. You don't get that in the NFL. You're not like, well, we might go Jaden Daniels unless Caleb Williams takes our better offer here.
By the way, the guys that were Chase Burns went the pitcher who was mentioned with the Guardians, but not really. I don't think any of us thought they were going to take him. He went with the second pick in the draft to the Reds. Charlie Condon, who was obviously mentioned, went third to the Rockies. Then the other guy, Caglione, went sixth to the Royals, and Weatherholt went seventh to the Cardinals. So all those guys mentioned went in the top 7. All right, let's switch gears here and let's talk about what the Guardians did this weekend, because obviously they did not play great baseball to end the first half. They still have the best record in the American League at 58-37, 19 games over 500 with a 611 winning percentage. The only team with a better winning percentage in baseball is Philadelphia. They are 28 games over 500, which is crazy. But the Guardians finished the break slightly ahead of the Orioles and the Yankees for the best record in the American League. The lead in the AL Central, despite losing 2 of 3 this weekend, is still 4.5 games. The Guardians have played 95 games, so they have 67 games left in the season. But they did lose 2 out of 3 this weekend. And really, since winning those first 2 games of the Baltimore series in late June, they haven't played particularly well. They've lost, 11 of their last 18 games. So it's about a 3-week stretch to end the break where they didn't play particularly great baseball. But neither did the Yankees and neither did the Orioles during that stretch. The Twins obviously played well until the last couple of days also. But where do you feel like they're at coming off this weekend? And how big is this break right now?
I don't know. There's a team that needs it more than they do. Maybe the White Sox.
No, gosh. Yeah.
But yeah, it comes at a good time. I mean, they just looked tired, lackluster. It's one thing I feel like a lot of their losses in the first half were 4-3 because they just couldn't get the big hit. Mm-hmm. And then this last week, they shut out 3 times, and it felt like they were just on fumes. And that's not an excuse. Like, that's right. You still lost. Like, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything here. It was a bad week. If you could have just 4 games that they lost by 1 or 2 runs. I mean, if you could have just turned around one of those, you're feeling quite a bit better. But I also think they need starting pitching help. There's no doubt about that. You can't burn out the bullpen at the pace they're going and survive 162 games. And, you need another arm that you feel comfortable with pitching in the playoffs, all that stuff that we've been talking about literally for like 2.5 months now. You could use another bat.
No doubt.
I mean, I think I don't think it's just one thing you're targeting here at the trade deadline. And I think they need, hopefully you almost wish that the guys weren't competing in the All-Star game stuff. If David Fry was planning to just hang out at his pool all week, and now he's got to go do media day today and All-Star game festivities tomorrow, and you almost wish he could just skip all that and just stay in the pool for 4 days. He needs this break, I think, more than anybody. But they need a bat. They need someone else who they can hit behind Ramirez and Naylor, who, when those guys are cold, like it's just another person who could get hot, and they don't have that right now. And I think, the offense it far exceeded everyone's expectations in the first half, but I also think there are some signs that there was some regression coming. The numbers with runners in scoring position, those things. And I think that maybe masked the fact, at least at certain points, that they still need help there too.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. You and I have consistently said they need one more bat. Even when they were playing their best, we were asking for a bat. It really feels like they need a number 2 hitter. And in a perfect world, they'd get an outfielder. But if it's a rental, the position really doesn't matter. If it's a guy you're getting for more than 1 year, then position matters to some degree. But if it's a rental, it doesn't matter. You want to go get a shortstop or a second baseman or whatever. They need a guy who could hit some home runs, who could drive in some runs. And there's going to be guys available. It'd be interesting to see how aggressive they are. I think we're all hoping that this team that has not been aggressive at the trade deadline for a number of years, in a season where you and I are totally in lockstep that they are a World Series contender. I want 2 starting pitchers and a hitter. Maybe I'm getting too greedy. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think, it's not about spending a ton of money. It's about spending the prospects. And I think you got to do it. This is the time to go all in if you're the Guardians, because I don't think there's any reason. The Yankees and Orioles look like they have issues too. And there's no reason the Guardians cannot go to the World Series this year. I really believe that. And maybe I'm fooling myself. I don't know, Zach, but I really think they're capable with some additions here.
I think so too. I also think it's pretty important to get that first round bye. And they're in good shape for that, but you want to make sure.
Yep.
And also, just if you could get the number 1 seed, they have a 30-11 record at home. Like, that's not a fluke. I think they're really comfortable there, or they've mastered how to use the jet stream or whatever's going on with the renovations. But regardless, like, if you can get the number 1 seed, that's very beneficial. And you skip that coin flip of around the 3-game wild card, best of 3 wild card series.
Definitely.
That's huge. And then maybe you only have to go through one of those teams, Baltimore or New York, and you get the home field advantage for that series. And that's so beneficial. But if you're also going to play a 7-game playoff series, you probably need a starting pitcher, and you definitely need a hitter. So I'm with you. It doesn't matter what the roster looks like at this point, how everybody's playing. You're 58-37. That speaks enough volumes to.
Oh yeah.
That's enough motivation to go out and supplement the group that you have and capitalize on what you've built to this point.
That's right. And we'll find out. I mean, the Guardians' schedule in July and August, outside of the Tigers, and even obviously the Tigers are competitive, but you look at their schedule after the break, they got the Padres, then the Tigers, Phillies, best team in baseball, quick series with the Tigers, then a 4-game set with Baltimore, Arizona was decent, at Minnesota, the Cubs we'll see, at Milwaukee, at the Yankees, Texas at home, Kansas City at home. I mean, and they play the Dodgers a little bit after that. I mean, there's some really tough games, and we're going to find out what this team is made of in that stretch in July and August. But they're going to have to make big decisions in the next 2 weeks, and hopefully they'll do the right thing.
Yeah, this is where you regret going 6-7 against the White Sox and Rockies.
Yeah.
I think I will say, like, I was looking at the schedule, and they end the season with 13 of 16 at home.
That's huge. Yeah.
So that helps, but it's very weird. Like the one road series is in St. Louis. Cardinals will probably be in the thick of the race over there.
Yep.
They end the season at home against the Astros, who could be fighting for the NL West. So
that's true.
It's really strange.
It's a weird schedule.
And you're right. Like it doesn't. There aren't very many easy points, and that's why you need the starting pitching help, just so you're not. You can't live for another 2 months with, all right, we got Carrasco through 4 2/3 or Lively through 5 1/3, or like you can't live like that. You need some
No.
help. So
And
it's
the
not even just
Guardians,
about October. It's about
yeah.
getting through August and September too.
Yeah, and sorry to cut you off, Zach, but the Guardians, when they come back from the break on Friday at home against San Diego, they don't have an off day till Wednesday the 31st, which is a bizarre off day, but that's it.
That's the day. That's so Chris Antonetti and Mike Chernoff can have beers to celebrate the acquisition of
Let's hope
your
so.
2 starting pitchers and a hitter.
Right. From July 19th through August the 7th, they have 1 day off that Wednesday. That's it. So you got to have a full boat of pitchers, and hopefully they'll have the 2. I think it's promising that Gavin Williams has had 2 good starts here in a row. Ben Lively bounced back. I thought pitched pretty well yesterday. But obviously the bats have just gone ice cold here in the last, outside of that, what was it, 10-9 or 9-8, whatever that game they won against the Tigers. Outside of that, this road trip, they couldn't hit it all. All right, let's get fan reaction, fan comments. Been a lot of people on for this early morning show. We appreciate it. Zach says, Bazzana, let's go Guards. Derek Parslow, let's go. Kristen says, morning, fellas. What a draft we had. Great Malenko says, what are your thoughts on drafting a catcher? You mentioned that earlier. It is interesting. I don't think it's necessarily an indictment in any way on Bo Naylor. Do you?
No, you want depth there.
Yeah.
And also, like, catchers have short shelf lives. Like, it's hard to find a catcher who's a good major leaguer for 10 years. So you always want to have people in the pipeline there.
No doubt. Christian says, guards didn't get cute. Love it. Derek would have liked to see 2 pitchers after Baz, but I like Cozart. KW says, I wanted Condon. B. Skrills, let's go Guardians. Trent Ganja. Ramirez got a shot at the home run derby. What do you think? He's an underdog.
Yeah, but he also, like, I don't know. I told an editor last week that, like, because I'm taking some vacation this week, and I said, I'm taking vacation, but I'm fully expecting to have to write something on Jose Ramirez winning the Derby because he's just got that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He didn't do
like,
great. Was
he
it
can
last
do
year that he was
anything.
in it?
What was that?
Was it last year that he was in it or 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago, and if you remember, he had to hit right-handed because he was dealing with the torn thumb ligament.
Yep.
So he's
That's
healthy
right.
this time, and I don't know. There's that aura about him where I would not put anything past him.
That's true. And, some guys get nervous doing those things. That won't be the case with him. I don't think that guy feels any pressure.
The fact that because he made it sound like the first time he did it, he only wanted to do it because it was a bucket list thing. His mom always wanted to see him in the Derby.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be the only time he ever did it. So the fact that he is adamant that he does it again tells me he's got some plan where he's going to captivate the nation.
Let's go. Cthulhu says, we are going to come back strong after the All-Star break. We got this. Kyle Bowen, first number 1 pick in franchise history, and 92.3 The Fan is playing Browns players trying to pronounce Cuyahoga. That fits.
As we try to pronounce Bazzana.
Yeah, right. B. Skrills, the Guardians might be involved with the Rangers in a trade deal. Okay. Haven't seen anything about.
Rangers are only 5 games out in the division, defending world champions. It's hard. Like, maybe they sell and maybe they should, but I don't know. Eovaldi would be a nice fit.
I think right now you're looking at in the American League, the White Sox, A's, and Angels have been there. I think the Blue Jays are probably done. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're 8 games under 500 now. So I think they're an interesting team to look at. Miami, Colorado, Washington. The Cubs played better right before the All-Star break, and they're only 3.5 out of a wild card spot. So I don't know if they're ready to cash their chips. I think they should be, but I don't know that they will because I was hearing yesterday that they're talking about trying to get Danny Jansen from Toronto. So that's not a trade you're making if you're dumping. So we'll see. But as of now, you do have, I would say, 6 Angels, A's, White Sox, Rockies, Nats, Marlins. Maybe, the Nationals are only 6 out of a wild card spot, but they just traded their setup man the other day. So I think
I would put the Nationals, Tigers, and Blue Jays in there.
You put the Tigers only 3 games under 500.
But they're 7 out of the 3rd wild card.
Yeah, that's true.
I think you got to be. Some of these teams have to be realistic.
I think the Tigers
I know they're not, but
I wonder. I know they won't trade him. I know it's unlikely that he gets traded, but I wonder if they would consider, if somebody blew him away, trading Skubal. I don't think they should.
No,
but I wonder if they would consider it.
Yeah, probably not. But Boris is his agent, right? So he's not he's not re-signing there.
Probably
So
not. No.
so you've got him for 2 more years after this, and are they in a position to contend? Like, that's I don't know. So
Yeah, a lot of
they're
their.
in a
I mean,
weird spot.
they're with their two biggest draft picks in the recent years, right? Mize and Torkelson are both. I mean, Torkelson's in the minors
Yeah.
again after he had a good season last year. He's totally regressed, and Mize is up. Looks like a back end starter right now at best. So, yeah, I don't feel like they're ready to contend, especially because the Royals are better. And obviously, the Twins and Guardians are always competitive, and it's not like they're going away anytime soon. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they do. Again, they're not going to trade him within the division, I wouldn't think. But if I'm the Guardians, I at least make a call and basically say whatever it takes because I'd give up anybody to get him.
Yeah, and Flaherty's not a bad consolation prize either. He's
No,
been really good.
no, he'd be a tremendous addition. Anyway, we'll see what they do. Zach, great stuff as always.
You playing some golf today? Is that what I heard?
I am not playing. I'm dressed for golf. I got like golf shorts on, and I guess this is a golf shirt. We are doing the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show live from the Austin Carr golf event, which is at the Quail Hollow Country Club. Sounds very fancy. As soon as we get done here, I'm getting in the car and driving to the east side. Make a rare trip over the east side.
Great course.
So we're doing the show from there. Austin Carr will be on with us. Our colleague Jason Lloyd is one of the celebrity golfers, but no, I don't play.
Wait.
You believe that Jason is a celebrity golfer?
So if you're participating in this golf outing and you get one celebrity in your group, it could be Jason Lloyd.
Could be Jason Lloyd. That could
be no joke. And Jason, longtime friend, colleague, nothing but great things to say about him.
Yeah.
Literally the worst golfer I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, is that bad?
Yeah. I once watched him, not just once.
Yeah.
On a par 3, like 185 yards, hit driver. And, your driver, you hit much farther than that. So he would choke up as far as he could, looking like Rajay Davis in Game 7 against Chapman, and then hit it like 3/4. And it somehow got lucky and worked once. And so he always does that on par 3s. I mean, it's an abomination. And I just feel terrible for the poor people who are paying probably a decent amount of money to be partnered with a real celebrity.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to bust his balls about this now. No doubt about it. All right. So it'll be fun, folks. The Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show on a different time today because we're at the golf event. And we got to talk to celebrities like Jason Lloyd at the appropriate time. 10 a.m. to noon instead of 11 to 1 today. Zach and I will be back on Friday to kick off and get ready for the second half of the season. We'll talk about Jose Ramirez in the home run derby. We'll talk about the All-Star game and look ahead to a big homestand coming off the All-Star break. Zach, enjoy your week off. Well-deserved. And we'll talk to you all next time. Where else but right here on the Ultimate Cleveland Guardian Show.